What is going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Friends of Five. My name is Matthew.
And I'm Ryan Lasner. And we have a very special guest today.
All right, before we get to that guest, as always, guys, make sure you get onto our YouTube page, follow us there, subscribe to us there, like it, leave us your comments, and follow us on Twitter. And as I'm going to let Ryan keep going.
All right, so we have a very special guest today, Will Manso of Channel 10 News, sports director. Been there for about, over 10 years. Thank you for joining our show.
Double it, man. I'm so old, you guys can't even figure it out. I've been there 22 years at Channel 10.
22 years.
Yeah, man. Yeah,
wow.
22 years. Yeah, it's a
all
long
right.
time.
So you started when you were like 5?
Exactly. You guys were like in diapers.
No, I think you were 5. God.
Oh, I was probably like you guys. How old are you guys, if you guys don't mind saying?
I'm 28.
33.
Okay.
As of yesterday.
You guys could pass for 24, 25. I was 24 when I started.
Wow.
23, about to turn 24, so I'm 45 now. I'm going to turn 46. So.
Wow, that's crazy.
Long time.
We look great.
Thanks, guys.
So now Miami Sports is coming back to fruition in a way, of sports in general, but more so like the Heat coming off that, that 22-point win over the Pacers. I feel like they kind of rejuvenated the fan base. TJ Warren didn't have a great game. And it seems like the Miami Heat are going to be playing the Pacers again in the playoffs. Do you think they pose any threat to us at all?
I mean, I think the answer is yes, obviously, because the Pacers are a good team. Look, they had played well in the bubble up, and they had a couple of impressive wins. They beat the Lakers. They've been playing good basketball. And throughout the season, you see that when they're healthy, they're a good team. Obviously, health a big factor with Sabonis being out. What his status is, I guess we'll figure out in the next week or so. Oladipo is not necessarily himself yet, which is obviously a positive for the opponent because when Victor's healthy, he's one of the better players in the league. So are they a threat? Yes. Should you feel good as a Heat fan with that matchup? Yes. I mean, I think the Heat have proven they play them tough. The style that the Heat, the depth that they have, the matchups that Spo goes with have been advantageous so far for Miami. But I think any playoff series, you get a little nervous because it's the playoffs. Anything can happen, and one injury or one bad play or one moment changes an entire series. And, you can't dictate or predict that ahead of time. But I think Heat fans should feel good the way they played the other night, and if that's the matchup in the first round.
Right.
There's a possibility that we might match up against Philly. So do we rather – I mean, I know we rather as fans beat Philly because, we would just love to see them, we would love to be the ones that send Philly home. But matchup-wise, is it even – I know Embiid it might be out, and I know Ben Simmons is definitely out.
Yeah.
So who do we want to play? Because they still have a lot of firepower over there in Philly.
Yeah, I mean, you forget. First of all, Embiid, all the reports indicate that he should be able to return, right? Whether it's right away for a game one or in the series at some point, but it doesn't sound like it's long term. It sounds like he'll be back soon. Look, I know that Heat fans are tough on Jay Rich, but Jay Rich is a quality player. We saw him the other night in a game, scored 30-something points. Tobias Harris is a proven scorer in the league. They have shooters in depth. They have a solid team. Obviously, not having Ben Simmons changes the structure of it, though, because he is the ball handler. He is so lethal around the basket, his ability to get to the basket. Yes, we know he can't shoot, but the way he dictates the pace and makes them go, it's a big loss. So I think, to be honest, guys, sure, I think it's clear you'd rather face a team that's beat up and struggling and maybe mentally not there in Philly. But come playoffs, again, all that stuff is different. And then when you look at it from a fan perspective, we all talk trash on Twitter and on social media. We all follow all that stuff. There's no winning when it comes to playing the Sixers from a fan perspective. Because if you play them in the first round and you win, then it's, we didn't have Ben Simmons and Embiid's kind of beat up. His ankle wasn't right. And if you lose, you will never hear the end of it.
No.
We beat you without Simmons and a banged up Embiid. So I think I'd rather just take my chances with Indy.
All righty. And what were your thoughts? We beat the Pacers, yes, and pretty well. What were your thoughts after the game when Oladipo, is hanging around Jimmy and Bam and DJJ, and it seems like he's more comfortable around our guys than Indiana's guys. Should we take anything of it? Your counterpart Clay also mentioned that it's probably the most obvious decision that Oladipo should be jumping to Miami eventually. Do you see anything in that at all?
Well, there's two sides to that question. Number one is, does it bug me that they're hanging out and doesn't mean anything? While I joked earlier that I'm older, obviously, and I grew up watching basketball in the '80s. Guys are supposed to hate each other and all this stuff. I mean, there was still camaraderie, though. There were still guys that even back then they were friends. Maybe on the court when they were playing, they weren't, but they still are friends. And I think in Victor's situation, people forget that Victor Oladipo lives in Miami. I mean, he has a home down here, right near the arena. He's in this area a lot. I've seen him often around Miami, and he's friends with guys in the offseason. There's a relationship built there that goes beyond basketball. These guys are just friends. So it's not a matter of, think of these players. They all know other players, and all those players in the offseason come to Miami to vacation. They bring their spouses, their friends, their families. It's not all recruiting. All those players are not thinking about coming to Miami.
Right.
It's different because there's the ability potentially to get him, and because of contractual reasons and things like that. And again, he lives here, so the rumors heat up and stuff. I think Vic would be a great fit with the Heat. I think that's obvious. I mentioned earlier, healthy. He's one of the better players in the league. We've seen it. Did I make a lot of it? Given the relationship of the past, I didn't. If this was something new where Oladipo was kind of like quietly in the shadows and, Vic has been open and the players have been open with the relationship with him after games, hugging him and seeing him. The fact that this was in a end of season bubble setting and, with all the rumors made it a little juicier. But I don't think that's going to matter when it comes to whether Victor Oladipo ever one day will be a Miami Heat member.
Gotcha.
So if we were to get a Victor Oladipo, are we giving him the max? Because there looks like he's still not right.
Yeah.
Is that a concern? Like, should we kind of be concerned about that, or is like just give him the money and we'll worry about it later?
I mean, obviously, the medical stuff is stuff that teams have to look into, and what you learn about a player and look at his medicals and see how he is doing. But let's not forget about Oladipo. Again, pre-injury, he was one of the better players in the league, and not just better players, but an ascending player. It's not like you're getting a guy on the tail end of his career and then you're worried, well, he's on the wrong side now after this injury. He was on the right side. He got hurt. It stopped him. I think he's an ascending player still. But obviously, the medical stuff is stuff the Heat or any team would have to be concerned with and have to look into. As far as the max question, I mean, I don't think there's a player out there at his age that you think, and again, that type of level player that you think you're going to get for less than the max. I mean, I think Victor Oladipo is going to get a max, and I think he's going to deserve it. I think he's proven that he can be that kind of player and scorer and leader. So yeah, I think if whoever you are, Heat or someone else, if you want to get Victor Oladipo, you're going to have to pay him big bucks. There's no way around it.
And with that said, so let's say Jimmy has the max, Bam will have a max, potentially Oladipo. Does that limit them from getting another star? And do you think is there somebody even better that Miami could get and to put their money towards? Because they have to pay Duncan Robinson, you would think as well.
Yeah. Well, I think that's why I always say there's no person I respect in basketball. Like, as much as I love Pat Riley and I love Pat and respect him very much, and his record speaks for itself, I don't think there's anybody I respect more than Andy Ellisberg.
Of course.
Because Andy is the guy that has to make anything, whether it's any of the names you guys just mentioned or someone else, has to make it work. And I think, number one, when you're a franchise, you're always 2-3 years ahead. I mean, while the Heat are getting ready for the playoffs, Pat Riley, Andy, Shane Batty and Nick Harrison, they're all thinking of 2-3 years down the road of what our team's going to look like. Is it going to include a Duncan Robinson or Derrick Jones Jr. or these young guys that we have, Kendrick Nunn, Tyler Hero? Are they part of that core? And if not, how do we use them to get the next core? And I think Victor Oladipo is an obvious case. He's there. He's going to be available. But I think, everybody talks about Bradley Beal and then the obvious whale, Giannis Antetokounmpo, what Giannis is going to do. I think if you're the Heat, you can't limit yourself. You can't put yourself in a hole and just say, okay, this is route one. And if that because of it, you're going to miss out. There you go. You got the Antetokounmpo. Well, I'm still old school recruiting. I still got D Wade on.
Okay, very nice.
I got the main recruiter on. But so to answer your question, guys, the best way I can is you have to have your options open. So if you're a true option, if you really feel like Victor Oladipo is that guy that you can pair with Bam and Jimmy and Duncan and whoever your core is, and that's the way it works out, then go for it. But you cannot limit your options if there's bigger picture or if you're trying to get maybe two guys. There are going to be some tough decisions. Look at all the names we just said, right? Throw them all in a hat.
Right.
It doesn't fit. It doesn't fit. You can't keep every guy or get every guy we just mentioned. Right. So you have to find a way to pick and choose and make it work financially.
So barring any injuries, should we expect anything less than the Miami Heat making it to the second round?
No, I think you should expect that. I think, when the season started, when they got Jimmy Butler, my honest goal was win a series, right? Win a series. That was number one. Oh, look at it. We got a guest. I like it. Win a series was the number one thing. Look, my kids are running around, so if they get on camera soon, then that's a whole other story.
They're welcome. They're welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate it. No, win a series was the number one focus. But then we all got greedy, right? When the Heat started playing well and we saw what they were with Jimmy, all of a sudden we're like, hey, maybe the Eastern Conference Finals doesn't sound so crazy. And then when they were one of the top 5 teams in the league for a while, we said, hey, why can't they get to the NBA Finals?
Right.
So we've gone the whole shift of emotions. I think the real honest take is, though, win a series, and then once you're in that second series, hey, you got opportunity to get to the conference finals, try to get there. That's another goal. That's the new goal. But I think if this Heat season ends with a second-round loss to the Bucks in a hard-fought series, we're all going to be disappointed. But let's face it, it's not going to be the end of the world. We're all going to understand that this team has made a pretty significant leap in getting Jimmy and the ascension of Bam and, Tyler, Duncan, the young guys. I don't want to sound like a defeatist attitude. I want to get to the conference finals. But I think winning a series, anything less than winning a series would be very disappointing.
Gotcha. So Myers Leonard, we haven't seen many minutes from him. I'm not sure to say why, but you think maybe they're just trying to keep him fresh, along with, I guess, mostly him. But do you think they're trying to keep him fresh for the playoffs?
No, I don't think that's the reasoning. And as much as I'd like to say that is the reasoning, I don't. Now, do I know the exact reasoning? No, I can't get in Spo's head. And Spo works in so many different ways, and his mind is so different as far as what he tries to accomplish with his roster. And oftentimes we think it's crazy, and then it works. And look, even now, Spo was asked the other day after the Indy game about having Jay in the lineup, and look at the difference Jay has made. He's making threes, stretching the floor even more. He's a tough guy. Yeah. He fits that Heat culture. Not saying Myers does it.
Right.
He obviously does. But the Jay idea as a starter has worked. Then all of a sudden, Spo goes out because Kendrick's situation, he goes and throws Goran in the starting lineup, and we know Goran's a proven starter in this league, but he hasn't been this year with them, and he plays well. So Spo is trying to mix and match, and for whatever reason it may be, Myers is not part of that mixing and matching right now.
Right.
Will he be at some point? Spo's the kind of guy, you guys have been Heat fans long enough and covered and watched the team long enough to know that Spo will be game 3 of the second round, and Myers hasn't played in a month, and he's like, hey, you're starting. And that's just the way Spo is. If he sees a matchup or something that he thinks can help him win. So I wouldn't put the nail in the coffin of Myers Leonard as any kind of Heat rotation guy in this postseason. But I don't anticipate the way it's going now that he's going to see a lot of playing time anytime soon.
Gotcha.
So there's another guy who I think might not be seeing as much playing time soon. That's Kendrick Nunn. I know he had his personal issues. He went home. He took care of it. Hopefully, it clears his mind. But he has been playing really, really bad, right? But on the other side, you have Tyler Hero, who's been playing phenomenal, right? So, can we expect more Tyler Hero maybe in the starting lineup? I know that you don't want to hurt the confidence of a young player like Kendrick Nunn, but if it's going to help us win, should we see Tyler Hero in the starting lineup? And is Kendrick Nunn, how much more chances do you think he'll have until he finally gets his role, fully diminished?
There's a lot of angles with that question. Let's start with the Tyler Hero Goran. Look, the other day you would have thought after Tyler had almost a triple-double as a starter, he would be a starter once again. But Spo went with Goran. Now, that's not to say that tonight or next week or in the playoffs that Spo's going to go with Goran every time over Tyler or Kendrick. But again, it goes back to what I said earlier, that it's hard to get in Spo's mind of what he thinks, because you would have thought that Tyler Hero, hey man, he played great. He almost had a triple-double. Start again. No. He said, I'm going to get Goran, who's a proven starter, but hasn't started for us for this season. He's a sixth man, and I'm going to start him, and I'm going to put Tyler back on the bench. So to that point, the logic with Spo with Kendrick is going to be a tough one, because in fairness to Kendrick, he had to deal with COVID-19. He had to deal with the time off already that players have dealt with. So he really was a step behind in the recovery process, because he didn't get to get in the bubble and start that process. He had to deal with sitting even longer and waiting. And while he was asymptomatic and didn't have major issues, it still was an extra week or two where he couldn't be there in the bubble and with his teammates. Then he comes in and he's a little hot and cold. He made a couple nice plays. Then he was off on his shot. And then all of a sudden he has a personal reason he has to leave again and then quarantine again. So the answer is, it's not really fair to say to Kendrick that he couldn't help this team, but he's definitely behind other guys right now because of all these things I just mentioned. So can he come back tonight? We're waiting to see if he can clear quarantine and play today, and then maybe play a lot of minutes. Remember, the Heat don't necessarily need these games. They're locked into 4 or 5 now. Maybe if Kendrick's back tonight or the next game, you extend Kendrick and give him 30, 35 minutes to get his wind under him, see how he feels, and then in the postseason, you decide what's next. The positive guys in all this, he'd have a lot of options.
Yeah.
If you start Gore, no one's getting mad. If you start Tyler, no one's getting mad. If Kendrick looks like himself, the guy we saw most of the season, and he starts, no one's getting mad. I mean, Spo has options to make the right decision, and I think Spo usually tends to make the right choice.
Right. And Kendrick Nunn is kind of like Miami's best trade chip, too, in a way. I mean, that's the name we keep seeing if it's going to be.
Say that again. You said best trade? Is that
I'm sorry. That Nunn seems to be Miami's best trade chip. He seems to be. So you want to get him out there, show him off as much as possible. So let's talk about Duncan Robinson. He came from undrafted, limited minutes, and now he's leading the NBA in, 3-point field goal percentage, pretty much. Do you see a ceiling for him? Do you think he's worthy of a max? Would another team give him a max? And also, what do you think he'll be taking the last shots for Miami in meaningful games?
I mean, look, guys, you asked this question 5 years ago, whether a shooting, primarily shooting guy, like a guy who's known just for his 3-point shots, 5-6 years ago, if he deserves a max, you'd think you're crazy. No, you have to do everything to be a max player. You got to attack and play defense and change the game. Well, guess what? Fast forward to now, shooters change the game, and we've seen a little bit of glimpse of what Duncan has been able to do, recognizing that teams aren't just going to leave him open and attacking the basket. And he's learning that. He's still not 100% there, but he's learning how to get to the basket, how to attack when the shots aren't there. But when you look at a guy that's shooting at the percentage he's shooting, at the volume he's shooting, at the efficiency he's shooting, I mean, what in this NBA, how many players do you have like that? If you just put it on that, Duncan is one of the more productive players in the league. And that, I know that sounds crazy or like a homer, but just look at the stats. What he does is game-changing night in and night out. And the preparation teams have, and the way that they have to set their defense to get on him and do not leave him open, his ability to space the floor because he's getting so much attention and then drive things into others in the inside. I mean, again, I can't answer the question whether he's a max guy, but back to like we talked about Oladipo, Duncan Robinson's going to get some big-time money when the time comes. And if the Miami Heat want to keep him, they're going to have to pay him some big-time money because he's proven to be a big-time guy. Can he be the closer like you mentioned, the big shots? Yeah, if it's a 1-point game or a 2-point game or a 3-point game and there's 8 seconds left and the Heat are devising a play, I don't know about you guys, but I'd be 100% fine with Eric Spoelstra devising that play for Duncan Robinson to take that shot.
Definitely. I have a lot of confidence in him.
Absolutely.
So Jimmy Butler's been awesome for us this whole season, right? Like I think the only thing people complain about Jimmy Butler at this point is his jump shot. Other than that, I mean, he's been phenomenal for us. Is there can we expect him to turn it up a level? I mean, like this guy, because he's got like that chip on his shoulder when he plays, right? I think the only other player in this league who has a bigger chip on their sholler is Damian Lillard, right? Like
he's a little insane right now. Yeah,
I think that guy was created for like a Pat Riley system back when he was coaching. But other than that, like Jimmy Butler's going to turn it up. Like, what can we kind of expect? Like, do you think we're going to see another level, or like what he's been doing at a consistent level? Is that what we're going to get? I mean, I'm fine with that. We still know what we're going to get, but like, what can he actually do to turn it up?
I think we saw it in the Indiana game. I think Jimmy in the Indiana game the other night is playoff Jimmy, which is not to say that Jimmy doesn't bring it every night, but there are nights where Jimmy is, I don't want to say less aggressive because he's always aggressive, but there are times where he is more let the others do their thing. You know what I mean? Like Jimmy is very much about wanting his teammates to do the right thing. And a lot of times that means deferring to them and saying, hey, Bam, you're getting doing a good job inside. You're the guy inside. Kendrick, you're shooting well. You're the guy taking the 16 shots tonight, or Tyler Hero, whoever it is. But Jimmy the other night wasn't the deferring type. I mean, while he had 5 assists and 4 steals and he did other things, Jimmy was attacking. He was getting to the basket and he was getting to the free throw line. And I think that Jimmy has a gear that, look, here's a guy who gets up at 3 a.m. to work out. I mean, he has a gear that we can't fathom, understand. I mean, I don't have that gear. I don't know how many NBA players have that gear. But Jimmy has the ability to not only have that gear and that mental strength, but he has the ability to do it over a long stretch. We saw it. We talk about the Sixers and joke about them and that rivalry. Jimmy was great in the postseason for them. I mean, Jimmy is a built for a playoff type run. He can lock in from one game and keep that same locked in mentality for 18 games, and I think that's the Jimmy you're going to see. You're not going to see a passive and deferring Jimmy. You're going to see the Jimmy that we saw against Indiana the other night. And that's an attacker, a finisher, a leader, nasty, defensive energy, nonstop. Jimmy Butler's made for that.
Nice. Oh, boy. So going back to the Giannis thing, he did a headbutt yesterday. Do you think he gets maybe like 2 to 3 games for that as far as a suspension, or you think the NBA just allows it?
I mean, I think, it's a good question. I read about it this morning on Twitter. I saw the video last night. And I read a little bit more about it. And the honest take is the league doesn't want to disrupt the playoffs over something like that. But at the same time, you can't just say, okay, Giannis, you're fine. He probably will have to pay a hefty fine. And I don't know what the Bucks have left in the bubble, but I would guess you suspend them for whatever they have left, whether it's a game or 2. I haven't looked at their schedule. I don't think it's going to be more than that. I'd be surprised if they suspend them for 2 games, 3 games that include playoffs. I would think it's a big fine. He can't play in the rest of the bubble, not like he was going to play.
Right.
And I think you just take it from there, because I just think if you're the league, while you don't want to say that that's okay to do, because it obviously wasn't, I don't know if you really want to, going into the playoffs when you're trying to get attention, have Giannis miss 2 games in the postseason. All that said, without Giannis, the Bucks are going to sweep in the first round, so it doesn't really matter. So it really isn't some sort of impactful. It would be much more impactful if that happened in a playoff series, right, and then say into a second-round series against the Heat, he was suspended a game or 2 or whoever. That's much more impactful than
that's what all Heat fans were wishing for, right? They're like, oh, man, why couldn't this happen in the first round of the playoffs?
Save the headbutts for later, man. Come on.
Yeah, like what the heck? So I'm going to transition, from Miami Heat. Right? Are we going to get to see them play this year? Because it's like a big deal. We're still not sure of what everything is going on. What do you think?
Man, I go back and forth on this, guys, and I've had conversations with the people at UM. And last night we all had a Zoom call with Manny Diaz. This morning, Dr. Julio Frank, the president of the school, was on CNBC talking about that they hadn't had student athletes in their last 2 rounds of tests, haven't had one positive case. And
nice.
He is an expert in the field of public health. He's a doctor who this is his expertise. So Manny Diaz has said often, look, we trust Dr. Frank that his guidance and what he knows. He knows much more than all of us, and certainly much more than most on social media. And, we tend to play our roles of what we think might happen, but we don't know the science. He does. He is saying that, look, keeping people in campus and moving around and wearing face coverings and being together is not bad if you do it right. A lot of times putting them out in the world is where you really take the risk, because then you're a little more reckless, maybe when you're going to a restaurant or a house party or doing something like that. So I guess to your point is the school feels, and Dr. Frank said it, and Manny has said it, and the ACC has sort of said it, that they feel that the science indicates that, yes, there are risks. No one is saying that this is risk-free. If you are, you're an idiot. I mean, it's a virus. It's not risk-free. It's a virus that's killed 160,000 people. It's not risk-free. But what they're saying is the science backs up is that if you're smart and you use the right protocol and you do the amount of testing that they plan to do, that you can go on with school life, athletic life, and do it in as safe a way possible. So I think Manny said it last night. It's the only answer I can give you guys to the question of whether there'll be UM football. They're going to try. And if something happens along the way, that there's an explosion of cases with a team in the conference or God forbid, the Canes themselves, it's not going to happen. I mean, but they are going to try. Unlike the Big Ten and the Pac-12 that have said they're not going to try, I think the ACC and the SEC and probably some other conferences are at least going to try. How long that lasts, we'll see.
Nice. And then jumping to the Miami Dolphins, do you feel like the Dolphins are kind of hiding Tua? We haven't seen him in the uniform yet. I know there's a photo shoot usually for the rookies, like the rookie premiere, and because of COVID, they're not getting that opportunity. But I feel like there's plenty of opportunities, selling opportunities that Miami's kind of missed on. Do you think they're strategically waiting on something? When are we going to see Tua in a Dolphins jersey, basically?
Well, it's like the Loch Ness Monster, man. They post like these little clips of him, like a picture of him smiling, looking to the side, or like from a distance. It's like, okay, man, let the man play football. He's a football player. But Brian Flores said the other day, I think there's two answers to that. Number one is you got to go by what Flo has said. And number one, that he said that they are going to not put undue pressure on him. He is a rookie like all the other rookies. He's got to earn his time. And I think because of everything that's happened this offseason, the Dolphins haven't even been throwing the football. This is the first week where they're really going to be doing football activities at some point. So that's a big reason why you haven't seen him out there doing stuff, because no one else has really been doing stuff. It's all been conditioning.
Right.
But I think more importantly than that is I think they just want to be careful with, putting too much on him. Ryan Fitzpatrick is the QB. He is the leader right now. And the future is Tua Tagovailoa. Everybody knows that. I think they just want to take it easy with him. I don't think they want to put any pressure on him. But I will say this, guys. I've been on a lot of those Zoom calls with Brian Flores and even with other players. And it doesn't matter who you're talking about, but it always seems to veer back to Tua. And I think they've figured that out, that any national attention that the Dolphins get this year, and most of the local attention they get this year, is going to be about Tua Tagovailoa. And they have to kind of figure out how to do that without putting too much pressure on him and making it seem like, hey, it's do or die with Tua this year, instead of there's a long-term plan for what Tua is going to be.
Yeah, I don't know if he's going to suffer from that confidence or the pressure. I mean, he has a documentary coming out on him already.
He can handle it, man. And the guy, it's true, the documentary that they're going to have, right? He's proven he had the eye of college football since he was a freshman. The eyes have been on him. And has he ever had a misstep? No. He's dealt with it. I don't remember one issue where he looked like he was a jerk or difficult or bad with his teammates or bad with the media or bad with his coaches. He comes from a really good family. He always talks about his faith and what it means to him. I don't think you have to worry about Tua mentally. I think you have to worry about Tua physically. Make sure that he's fine physically and that he can, take the rigors of the NFL.
Yeah. So our Marlins lost again.
They're still in first place.
It looked like somebody in our network said that the Marlins were the best story in sports. That did not last very long.
They got us through 2 weeks.
Realistically, what do you think is gonna come out of this team? Are we gonna have a chance, to make it, to the playoffs? Because it looked like we had great talent, and all of a sudden, these last two games kind of looked like we were back in reality. Like, yeah, those are not ready players.
And let's not forget that the Marlins are still missing half their team.
Yeah,
all those guys that dealt with COVID aren't back yet. I mean, you got your leader and your captain in Miguel Rojas. You started catcher Alfaro. You got, your ace and Sandy Alcantara. They're missing a lot of really good players.
And they're going to send them out for assignment before they come back. Yeah. So there's still a long way from
at least another week without them. So to me, it's always been, if these guys could just hang around 500, they've done more than that. They started 7-1. They're 7-4. You would hope that when these guys come back, they're still in that over 500 range, whether it's a game or two over 500, whatever it may be. And then I think you feel good that with those guys back, guys, 16 teams make the playoffs. It's an expanded playoff. It's ridiculous how many teams are going to be able to make the playoffs. It's totally different. So all the Marlins have to do is hang around 500 or in that range to be in a playoff race. And right now they're off, through 11 games of a 60-game season at 7-4. That's not a bad place to be, but they need to get those guys healthy, and they need that pitching, to be solid, and obviously led by Alcantara. You don't want to put too much on a pen that's already getting overworked. But when they get their players back, I think we'll get a better idea if they're really going to be in this. I've always said that for the Marlins this year, 500 was a great goal. I thought they would finish under 500. I thought my prediction was 25-35 through a season. They're obviously looking better than that. But I think if you can go around 500, not only is it a step forward for a franchise that hasn't had a winning season since 2009, but it's also a step forward for them to understand that some of this young talent is kind of turning things and changing things. And by the way, most of their core is still in the minor league system. What we're seeing now is still not even their main core for the future.
Right. Yeah. Speaking of, is there a young prospect that you are extremely excited about, whether it's like Jazz or, Lewin Diaz, or is there anybody that sticks out to you that you want to see? JJ Bleday?
Look, Jesus Sanchez, Lewin Diaz, JJ Bleday. Obviously, Bleday is the guy. He is the guy that seems the most polished. I mean, he is a natural hitter with that sweet left-handed swing. Everything about him looks like a pro player, Right. So he just looks like that kind of guy who could come in and from day one be a 290, 25 homer, 90 RBI guy.
Nice.
Just that distant, really good player. Now, I don't know if that's what he's going to be, but he's got all the makings of it. When you talk about upside, though, when you look at what, again, you mentioned some of those guys, Luis Diaz and Jesus Sanchez, what they look like they may be, but and Jazz Chisholm, the upside on him, a shortstop who can knock out 25 homers and steal 25 bases. I mean, he looks like a legitimate stud. These are all things at the minor league level that we know can change at the major league level. So that those are the guys to me that excite me. Obviously, when you talk pitching, Edward Cabrera, Sixto Sanchez, I mean, you're curious about Rogers and what they, Braxton and those guys, what they have. Look at all these names. And I always say this about the Marlins when people talk to me, they're like, well, are they going to be good? Do they really have young talent? Almost like what we talked about the Heat earlier, when you put all these names in the bag, what happens? Put all those names that I just said and the ones that I haven't said, just hit on 3 or 4 of them, and you've got a core for the future,
Definitely.
And that should excite you as a Marlins fan. Are they all going to hit and be all-stars and studs? We know that's not the way it works. Probably not. And it's more likely that it won't be the case. But if you just hit on 2 or 3 of those guys, you have got a nice core for the future of talented, impactful players for the Marlins.
Nice.
Yeah, and I think Jeter's done a good job of putting us in that, position to, because we had the worst farm system, and now we're in the top 5 or something like that. So that's good. I think everything I've gotten out of today with you, Will Manso, is that the Heat might win the championship. The Dolphins probably gonna win Super Bowl, and the Marlins, they've got a really good chance of getting the World Series this year.
And don't forget, the Canes are going to win a national championship with 2 conferences. So
that's right.
4 parades we're planning.
I mean, I don't know. We're gonna do parades though with all this COVID stuff going on.
We'll do it like this. We'll have like little fans and stuff, and then we'll do all these.
We'll have our own bubble. Cool. Well, ultimately, thank you, Will, for coming on. Did you have any last questions, Matt?
No, I think I'm good. Hopefully, I just want to see. I think that out of every team, I'm more excited about the Heat right now, because that's the moment that we're living in, and I want to see a Bucks Miami Heat matchup, and I want to see us go at least 2 of those games. But I would love to see a 7-game series with the Bucks. That would make my Miami Heat season.
I'm gonna spoiler alert. It's gonna happen.
Boom.
It's gonna happen.
Boom.
All right.
It's gonna happen. We're gonna see.
And when it happens for Game 7, we're gonna have you here.
We'll have a pre-game discussion just like this. I like it. I'm down.
Perfect. Alrighty. Well, I mean, let me just sneak something in. I saw whether you were moving or something, and you had a Mike Piazza starting lineup toy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I guess growing up, you were a sports fan in general. Was Piazza your favorite, or Jeter obviously, but was it mostly Piazza?
Well, my first idols, because I grew up an '80s guy, so my first idol was Don Mattingly. And Mattingly, of all things, now the manager of the Marlins, who's like the nicest human being alive. Don was my first idol. It was Don Mattingly, because I was born in Jersey. I moved to South Florida when I was 10. So those formative years of sports, I was in New Jersey. So my dad is a diehard Yankee fan. So I loved Mattingly and Dave Winfield and Greg Nettles. And that was like, those guys. I wanted to be a third baseman because of Greg Nettles. And then Mattingly was my idol. And so that was my core. Then the reason I became a Giants fan is because LT was a star, and I watched him play, and I'm like, oh my God, who is this guy? And I became a diehard Giants fan because of it. But Piazza, the way it worked with Piazza, of all things, is I used to work at a baseball card store in Lake Worth, Florida, when I was in my junior and senior year in high school, my freshman year at Palm Beach Community College. I used to work at a baseball card store in Lake Worth, Florida. So I had friends and family, and I knew the coach at Palm Beach Community College, where I ended up going. And I had gone there one day, and they had told me about this guy, Mike Piazza, who had gone in the offseason to take batting practice, and he was a Dodgers prospect who was going to be his rookie year. Right. And this kid was mashing the ball. And I'm like, really? I'm like, oh. So I went back to the baseball card store, and I looked through to find out through the guides, does Mike Piazza have any cards? And I found like his cards from 92 Bowman set, his rookie cards. And I was looking through them and saying, wow, this guy's a really good player. So I started stashing his cards and saying, okay, I'm putting his cards away. Maybe this guy's the real deal. And then he turns out he has an incredible rookie year, was rookie of the year. And I watched him play, and he became my favorite player. And I collected all his cards, which I still have. The only cards I have left are Don Mattingly cards and Mike Piazza cards. That's it.
Yeah, that Bowman was his best rookie. But it's weird. he was never actually linked to steroids, but I feel like there was some kind of rumblings within, and I feel like his value or his stock kind of dropped, or it's not where it should be because he has the most home runs for a catcher. So you would think he would get the respect, but I feel like it's not up there where we thought it was going to be.
Well, he had two things. It took him like 4 years to get into the Hall of Fame, which is incredible. I mean,
Right.
the guy should have been a first ballot Hall of Famer. But he admitted that he took Andro for a bit. And Andro was the stuff that Mark McGwire originally took that was legal at the time. You could buy it at a GNC or whatever nutrition store. But then they figured out, hey, this stuff is basically steroids. So that's where it all changed. And people thought, well, if these guys all took Andro, they were taking steroids and injecting each other. And he says he never took stuff, and whatever. You know how it is with guys. There are guys that have said they didn't take it and they end up taking it, and there are guys that are telling the truth. But to me, he's the greatest hitting catcher of all time. I mean, the guy had 3 straight years where he hit 360, 350, and 340 as a catcher. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
In that and all the home runs. So he was my idol. He was my favorite player. The funny thing is, years later, I've actually gotten to know him. It's funny how life works, comes full circle. Our kids went to the same school together for a few years. So one day I'm standing there and I'm like, holy cow, it's Mike Piazza. And he comes over to me to ask me a question about where this function was going to be. I'm thinking to myself, Mike Piazza's asking me a question. I'm like, actually, Mike, I'll walk you there. Come on, Tom. It's over in the cafeteria. Come with me. So I got to know him through the years. He's actually a very, very nice guy. And his family, they still have a home in Miami Beach.
Nice.
Will, you missed your chance. You should have been like, oh, it's over here, but we're going to have a meeting after at my house. Here's the address.
Oh, no. Here's the true story. True story of myself. So as I got to know him, one day he gave me his number because he said he wanted. So I was like, I texted my friends a screen grab, not of the number, but if it just says Mike Piazza's. I'm like, I have Mike Piazza's number on my phone, right there.
That's awesome. And then,
Ryan, have you seen that video of Will Manso rapping it? Yeah. So, Will, are you a bigger sports fan or a rap fan? Because that wasn't a casual rap fan rap you had over there.
I grew up in the '80s, and so I love. And I love all. I mean, I listen to music now. And again, I had 2 teenage daughters, so I mean, trust me, I listen to all the. They made me watch the video, the Cardi B video the other day.
Right.
So, yeah, I try to keep up with everything, but I loved my favorite rapper in the '80s was Special Ed. It's one of my favorite albums, Youngest in Charge. And Special Ed, he didn't do much after that, but that album, if you guys want to go old school rap and listen to Special Ed, Youngest in Charge, it's a great album. But I was big on Run DMC and all that era. That was what I grew up with, So
Marky Mark.
I do still listen to that music often. I still listen to those albums and stuff. Tribe Called Quest was always my favorite. Just kind of that genre, that era, is what I listen to all the time.
Were you a fan of Mellow Man Ace?
I was Mentirosa, man, of course.
I love that song. That's like the best song.
I know that song forward and backwards, man.
Yo, same here. That's like the number one. Like, I think of Miami every time I hear that song because I'm like, yo, Spanish, English, like this is my jam right here.
Yeah, that's true. That song, I must have heard that song a million times. It's on one of my running playlists. So you see me running on the boardwalk of Miami Beach, straight up Mentirosa. Today you tell me something, y mañana otra cosa. That'll be me.
Oh man. So thank you again, Will, for coming on the show. We know now that you're not Jorge Sedano, you are Will. No, I'm just kidding. But
I still get that.
At first, I couldn't decipher, but it's obvious now. But I honestly was faked out too. So.
I get it. I tell you this true story. I know we're gonna go, but I have taken a picture with a person who thought I was Jorge Sedano, and I didn't want to ruin their day, so I said, okay. And I texted Sedano right away. I said, hey, if somebody tweets you on Twitter and says, great meeting Jorge Sedano at this event today, just go with it, because I felt bad. I didn't want to tell them I wasn't. I didn't want to ruin their day.
No way. That's too funny, man. Oh, man. All right. Thanks again, Will. That was awesome. We'll definitely have you on again.
All right.
Good. Great day.